Hey, what's up YouTube? What's going on? So in the previous video I talked about my prospects on this channel, and just as I was thinking about the second topic for my video, a friend of mine texted me asking me how I edited this image. Now this photo that you see on your screen is not clicked by an SLR, it's not clicked by a DSLR, it's in fact clicked by LG G4, which is a smartphone, and it's a raw photo which eventually turned out to be this good. Now the special thing with this photo is edited in RAW, which we are going to talk about later in the video. But the thing is, with smartphone manufacturers amping up their camera photography game every so often, smartphone manufacturers have gotten really good at giving stock photos out of the cameras good enough that you don't even have to retouch them, and you can post them on your platforms like Snapchat or Instagram, which is what most people do, right? But that doesn't mean that editing the photo has lost all of its value. You can get better controls on colors, on lighting, and every other thing, all that good stuff in your photo. Now this tutorial is gonna have 4 parts, which I'm gonna be covering over the course of 2 videos, which would be part 1 and part 2. This video is part 1 of the tutorial, which would be covering only 2 aspects out of the 4, which is the basics and the shooting part. I'm gonna post the part 2 of the tutorial next week, probably as soon as I get done with this part. But for now, these are the 2 things that I'm gonna be focusing on. One is the basics, as I said earlier, and the shooting itself. Now when it comes to the basics, I want to introduce you to something called as the raw photo format. Now the reason I call it a photo format is because it's sort of a file, but again, it's not a format in itself. It's everything that your camera sees in front of the sensor and then captures it as it is and packs it into a single file. Now what does that mean? So when you click a photo, for example, you have a hot piece of kinda got a little distracted there, but moving on. So as soon as you figure out the dungeon in your smartphone settings that hides the pro mode and dive into it, you'd see something similar to this. Now RAW isn't really a photo format in itself, but all the information that your phone sensor sees in the frame packed into a single file, as we have talked about earlier. Something like RAW is great for getting that extra bit of information that will allow you to get a better edited output. It offers better control over the lighting, color, etc. as opposed to a JPG file, which is already compressed and has lost some of the data that the phone sensor originally saw in the image. Depending upon the picture that you have clicked, the size of a raw photo can be somewhere from 30 to 40 MBs or maybe even more. So you might want to make sure that you have ample storage space before shooting in RAW. To enable your device to capture RAW, all you need to do is find the setting where it shows what photo format the phone is saving the images in, and this might be in different places in different devices. For example, this is how you enable RAW on the OnePlus 6. Now when it comes to number 2 on the basics list, I would like to talk about exposure settings. Now, exposure settings is basically the time you allow your camera sensor to record the information in front of it and capture it all into one photo. So essentially it is the amount of time for which the camera sees the information in front of it and puts it all together in a photo. Increasing the number under the exposure settings, which is by the way denoted in seconds or fraction of a second, is essentially allowing the software to record the information in the frame for more amount of time, which would give you brighter photos at the cost of increased shakiness. For example, you're probably fine if you go up to 1/30th or maybe 1/60th of a second, but anything longer than that will cause the photos to be shaky. So you might need a tripod in such situations, since using just your hands won't be enough to stabilize the image. Decreasing this, however, would give you darker photos, since the camera wouldn't have much time to capture the light in the frame, but the photos wouldn't be as shaky. So something like decreasing exposure time is useful when there is plenty of light in the environment and what you are shooting is fast moving objects. From here on, I would quickly glance over the remaining 3 settings/points to consider while clicking pictures using your smartphone's pro mode. So let's start with the ISO first. ISO is the camera sensor sensitivity to light. Translating this tongue twister of a sentence into simple terms just means increasing or decreasing the ISO number can give you brighter or darker photos with more or less noise. Now what is this noise, you ask? Well, it is the little mosquitoes that you see all over your photos, mostly when the photos are clicked in low light environments. There is a bit of a learning curve with this, therefore it is important that you try the different combinations of exposure settings and the ISO setting in order to get the best exposed shot with the least amount of noise. Now let's move on to focus. This is essentially where you want the camera to focus in a frame. Wherever you set your focus, that subject is gonna look clear while everything else might be blurred out or defocused. The focus setting would allow you to focus on objects really close to the camera or set the focus to infinity for objects that are far away. Lastly, let's talk about white balance. White balance is how reddish or bluish you want your photos to be. That is the warm and the cold color tones. For example, this is how images with warm color tones look like versus the images with cold color tones. The setting controls the color of the white light in your image. Although you can change how warm or cold you need your photos to be, I prefer to change the color temperature during the editing process. So now that we have learned about the basics, I would like to cover up the shooting section. Now in this section, I would like to focus on some general tips that will help you to take decent photos and prevent you from taking horrible photos that you won't be able to fix in the editing process. So the first one is your phone screen brightness. Now because the screen is a viewfinder for the camera, the brightness level matters here, since low brightness levels can make you think that the photo has turned out darker than it actually is, and similarly high brightness level can make you think that the photo is bright enough. But actually, in situations where there is high amount of light, for example if you are in sunlight, I would recommend you to maintain a high brightness level in order to match the brightness level of the surroundings. And similarly, in low light situation, you can bump up the brightness to about 40 or 50% in order to keep the brightness level adequate enough for you to see photos well enough. Now the second thing I like to focus on is the lighting. Now the lighting here means the light around the subject and the light that is being focused on the subject itself. Now you would want the lighting to be in accordance with the angle that the shot is being taken from and according to the subject itself. Now you wouldn't want the light to be too bright or too dark that is filling the frame in order for you to capture the subject clearly. Make sure that the subject is properly lit for you to not miss any details and for the camera to see the subject better. If you're looking to get good or even decent shots with your smartphone, you gotta take care of the lighting. It plays a pivotal role in reducing the noise in the images and adding drama to your shots. And actually the picture that you saw before of me, which looks like I'm yet to hit puberty, was clicked with the help of sunlight that hit me at a certain angle. I'm assuming if you are shooting on a smartphone, you are probably on a budget. So I'd say you can invest in an external flash like this one, experiment with that, or you can shoot in natural lighting, which is the brightest, most even source of lighting you'll ever find without spending anything. Now another important factor that comes into play when it comes to smartphone photography is the angle of the shot. So what I would recommend you is you take multiple angles of the same subject with different lightings if you want. Photos turn out to be blurry sometimes, they turn out to be shaky the other times, or you might not have exposed the photo correctly. So to prevent these things, as a safety measure, I recommend you to take multiple photos of the same scene. Now something else that I would want to focus on is the usage of correct equipment and accessories. That basically means that you have to use equipments like tripod or smartphone holder or any sort of mount if it's necessary, or even Bluetooth remotes for the camera shut button that you can buy on Amazon, etc. Using the equipment would really help you get stable and in general better images, of course if you know how to use it. But it's the little things like these that will help differentiate your images with someone else's who's, for example, using conventional methods. Lastly, what I would want to focus on is learning by usage. Now by that I mean that you have to try out different features of the camera and the pro mode in order to know which setting works the best for you. Now with everything, there is a bit of a learning curve when it comes to using pro mode and smartphone photography, so you have to figure out your own way to make your photos look the best they can. Plus there is a creative side to photography in general, so you would have to use the features to know and to understand your creative potential and to put it to good use. But all things considered, I hope that I have been able to put a lot of information in a concise manner in part of the tutorial, and you would actually get out in the world and put the information that you have gotten to good use. If you think that this video was actually useful and was just not another tutorial on YouTube about how to amp up your smartphone photography game, give us a like. Thank you so much guys for watching this video despite me stuttering like a piece of shit and not being able to deliver my content properly. Thank you guys.